Allo, bonjour, hello. These are all examples of languages I was exposed to over the summer. My name is Railey Fitzgerald, and over the summer, I was lucky enough to travel to Spain to play field hockey. I've never been out of the country, so I was pretty scared to be leaving, especially without my parents. But luckily, my teammate Tucker Pond also flew to Spain to take part in the same program I did. In order to meet up with the other group of Americans that would be flying to Spain with us, we took a flight to New York City that left at around 6 in the morning. After landing in New York, we wandered the airport for what felt like hours until we finally found a small group of people holding goalie bags in some distant corner of the airport. The flight to Barcelona was a total of 8 hours long, and 2 meals were promised, but somehow I managed to sleep through both meals, so I'm still not convinced we were actually served food. Arriving in Barcelona was already a major culture shock, and I had only been there a few minutes. Now, I have taken Spanish ever since I can remember, so I thought that maybe I'd be able to understand some portion of what people said, or at least be able to read the signs in the airport and along the streets, but I was wrong. In my head, I kept telling myself that the camp we were staying at was English-based, so I would be just fine. But little did I know how wrong I would be again. I guess you could consider the camp English-based, but it felt very far from it. The main language the coaches of the camp spoke was Dutch, but they spoke very broken English as well. The coaches of the camp were members of the Netherlands national team or other various teams in the Netherlands. Now, if you have been at an Oakridge field hockey practice, you know that we need several slow run-throughs of a drill before we truly understand what's happening. Well, let's just say that was not a thing in Spain. You were just thrown into a drill, and when you did it wrong, you would get yelled at in Dutch. To say the least, I was lost. Another big shock to Tucker and I was the fact that they did not believe in stretching. There was no warm-up lap and a good stretch, as Kenny would say, and that was something that was really hard to adjust to. But the biggest surprise of all was the food. Every day, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we were given a piece of bread and Nutella to put on your bread. In the beginning, I thought to myself that since camp first started, the real food would be coming later, but little did I know how wrong I was again. You could add sprinkles to your bread. It sounds weird, I know. I learned later that the sprinkles were called hagelslaw, and they were brought in from the Netherlands. It sounds gross, yes, but once you accepted the fact that you were eating bread, Nutella, and sprinkles, you began to enjoy your meal, and sometimes I even miss it. In America, field hockey is mainly a sport for girls, but in Europe, field hockey is a huge sport for guys as well. Now, I don't want you to think that Tucker and I were anywhere near the top of the list when it came to who was the best kid out there. In fact, I would say that Tucker and I were some of the worst. The best kids out there were either boys or members of their country's national team. For example, one of Tucker and I's best friends was Carolina. Carolina is a member of the U16 Chilean national team. Yeah, let's just say she's pretty good. But my mom has always told me that you get better from playing with people who are better than you. It's pretty hard mentally to know that you're one of the worst ones out there and that certain people don't want to pass you the ball simply because you're not as good as them and they know it. But it was a humbling experience. I did not expect to be the best one out there by any means, but I didn't know how much about field hockey I still had to learn. I learned from watching the other players and mimicking their technique as best as I could, and it took me a while, but I finally began to understand the coaches and their instructions. When we were not playing field hockey and we had to stay at the camp, we had the option to either swim in the pool or hang out in the gym where we had mattresses to sleep on. You know, the kind that we took naps on in preschool? Those. Well, let's just say Tucker and I took 4-hour-long naps every day, and the mattresses became oddly comfortable when you were that exhausted. But on certain days, the camp took all the kids to La Rambla in Barcelona or to the beach. La Rambla is the heart of Barcelona. It is the street that connects Playa de Catalunya, the center of Barcelona, to the Christopher Columbus Monument at Port Vale. The street is 1.2 kilometers long and is lined with various shops, cafes, and of course, tourist traps. The Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca once said that La Rambla is the only street in the world which I wish would never end. Imagine walking down La Rambla and hearing Spanish spoken, which you can't really understand. But then imagine Dutch, German, Italian, and French all being spoken as well. Meanwhile, you can only communicate with people in English. The language barrier and cultural differences of the entire Barcelona trip made it difficult, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Being in Barcelona, walking down La Rambla, and being on the beach made me realize how much more there is to the world than Arlington, Texas. This trip has definitely sparked my interest in the possibility of studying abroad and seeing the world. Overall in Spain, I learned a lot of new things about field hockey, but I didn't know I was going to learn so much about myself. I consider myself to be humble, but now I know that I must be humble in all aspects of my life in order to improve myself every day as a person. This trip also taught me that life is not meant to be lived at home. The world is meant to be explored, and although I know I left no mark on Spain, I know that Spain left its mark on me. So I leave you with the John Levitt quote: "Be confident in your potential and aware of your inexperience." Thank you.